Hey, I'm Sarah Smith, family doctor, clinical day advisor, and the chatting coach. Welcome back to Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast, where we're going to be interviewing peers or world experts who can help us think about our clinical day in a way that is more sustainable and create time for our lives outside of medicine. Hello, everybody, and welcome back. Today we have with us Dr. Pauline Morris, who has also traveled the globe, but has probably done a bit more adventuring than even me. So I'm excited to hear your story. I'm going to let you introduce yourself. But we are fellow Queenslanders right now, which is fascinating and fun to have some Australians on, well, some currently residing in Australians on the podcast together. So welcome.
Oh, thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you for the invitation. I'm really, really pleased to be here and pleased that we finally got it arranged. It took us a couple of months to sort this out because when we first made contact, I was actually moving from Qatar to Australia. So
Wow.
that took a bit of doing. So it's great to be here. So a little bit about me. I work as an anesthetist. So for our doctors who are listening, that's the first thing you probably want to know. And yes, I'm still in full-time employment along with my coaching business. I started medicine in the Caribbean, in Barbados, where I'm actually from. So the University of the West Indies. And then from there, I went to Yorkshire in the United Kingdom because I thought, well, I need to see how anesthesia is done somewhere else in the world. And I had a fantastic mentor who somehow, I'm still not sure how he did it, kind of convinced me to do my exams all over again. And I then moved to London, where I started working as a registrar. And I became a consultant there, and I worked there for I was there for nearly 13 years, I think, in total. And then I got itchy feet again. I think it was the 7-year itch because I was 7 years a consultant. And I thought, oh, let's go see how anesthesia is done somewhere else. And through a conversation, one of those conversations that started with me going, are you okay? I ended up in a job in Qatar, and I was there for another 7 years. And guess what happened? I got itchy feet again. And whilst I was in Qatar, I met a wonderful couple who said, come see us in Australia, come see what life is like. I think you'll love it. And we did. We went to Sydney in 2019, and the rest is history, as they say. And now I'm in Queensland, enjoying surf, sea, and sand and living an Aussie life.
And you've only been in Australia for a few months. Wow.
Yeah. It's only been 3 months. Still haven't got our shipment over from Qatar yet, believe it or not.
Yeah,
So we're
that takes a
hanging
minute.
on, but I'm missing my stuff. But yeah,
Totally.
so
Yeah. I totally get that. That's so fascinating because when I moved from Australia to Canada and we stayed there 12 years and then we came back and I feel like a complete newbie. So I cannot imagine what you're going through in the first couple of years of working and the medication names, the
oh
way
yeah,
things are done, the paperwork, the systems, even the computer programs, the way people talk, the way shifts work, everything's different.
it's
Everything's different.
different.
So you must be someone who signs up for uncomfortable as well.
Oh yes,
Okay.
absolutely. You know what? I think there's a lot of personal growth in stepping outside of what you know. And a brilliant example of that is despite growing up in the Caribbean, I grew up in a time when little girls didn't, weren't allowed to go to the beach and show their bodies because that's what it was about. I grew up in a very Catholic house, so I actually didn't know how to swim. And sort of 2022, I really hurt my leg, and I was a really passionate gym bunny, and I couldn't go to the gym for at least 6 to 8 weeks. And the surgeon said, well, you can swim. And I thought, well, okay, well, I guess I'm going to have to learn how to swim then. So I taught myself how to swim. I watched YouTube videos, and I was telling somebody else about this swimming, and I always said I was always fascinated with the sea. So to curtail the story, I ended up from not being able to swim to within a year becoming an advanced scuba diver.
Wow.
So yeah, and I tell you, it is the most wonderful experience to be underwater. It's amazing. I can't believe I lived my whole life not doing it before. It's the most wonderful experience. It's you feel as if you feel as if you leave everything once you're
Yes.
under the water. It's amazing. It's beautiful. It's another world. So yeah, I enjoy pushing
And
myself
I
in.
know for sure that you're going to come for visit me because I'm in Cairns on the Great Barrier Reef, and I just took the kids last week on their very first ever scuba. I did not scuba, but they scubaed, and they said it was the best day ever. Though they weren't really counting all the other days, but they had such a magical time. So yeah, I totally
Yeah, it's an
look
amazing
forward to
experience.
meeting you in real life, which will be fantastic.
Yeah, so we're gonna do this. We're gonna get in the water together one day.
Now, tell me about as you went through medicine, there would have been challenges that came up about your journey.
Mm.
Tell us a bit about how you approached them, navigated them, things that happened within your career that are of note.
Well, um, I think from the beginning there were barriers because um, I lived in a time when people who came from my family's social stratosphere didn't really make it into medicine. And, you know, I was the second doctor in my entire family, sort of thing. And being female and not coming from that socioeconomic background in itself was a challenge. People questioned my right to be in that space. So, sort of from day one, it was, why are you here? You
Mm.
shouldn't be here. This space is not for you. So it's that adage, you know, there wasn't a seat at the table for me, so I had to create one. And what that meant is, as I went through my career, aside from the fact that it was medicine and the hours were taxing and the work was hard and the exams were difficult, I had to push through a lot of um, values and belief systems that had been ingrained in me by my upbringing, by my own social class, by the fact that I had been raised a Catholic. And it meant that from the beginning, I had to keep questioning things that my own epistemology and entomology. I had to keep saying to myself, well, if I want to do this, I need to learn to think differently. And that is something that walked with me for my entire career. And actually, it benefited me considerably because it meant that all these changes I had to get through in my career, um, you know, going from Barbados to Yorkshire, going from Yorkshire to London, and you wouldn't believe that 400 miles. It's like a totally different country, and then from London to Qatar, and each time there were periods of personal growth for me. Each time there were things that I thought I knew to be true that were challenged.
Mhm.
And I think the thing, and maybe that's just my genetic profile, I think the thing that really worked for me was my ability that when my beliefs and value systems were challenged, I didn't go, nope, 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 nope. This is what I know, and I'm just gonna stay here. I went, okay, maybe I haven't seen the whole picture. Maybe I don't know as much as I think I do. Maybe, you know, somebody else can educate me on something that I thought I had a handle on. And the amount of times that happened, it's innumerable. And there were times when I was embarrassed, I was ashamed of the things that I thought I knew, the beliefs that I had. And I get a bit warm and a bit blushed when I think about them. And, you know, moving from a Western society to a Middle Eastern society, I had to go through that process again. And, but each time I went through that process, I think it made me a better person. It made me a better physician. It made me more, I don't like the word resilient because it always implies that you just have to barrel through something. That's not what I mean. Maybe what I mean is more flexible
Mhm.
and accommodating rather
Mhm.
than resilient. So rather than breaking with the force, I bend with it. And then I decide whether I want to stay bent or whether I want to take my previous position. So it's that sort of thing that I think has carried me through to a successful career. And taking each of those instances and thinking, right, what can I do to make this work better for me as a person?
Mm.
And yeah, I think that's how it kind of went. Um,
Yeah, it sounds like you grew some really thick skin and accommodating flexibility about learning new environments and cultures. Like to be, I appreciated that it was hard to be an international medical graduate as an Australian graduate, right? When I was here. But when I moved to Canada, I experienced that change in culture and the I'm not from here, I didn't train with you piece of international medical graduate. But my degree was considered equivalent. So I didn't have a lot of the overcoming that a lot of the other physicians who were international medical graduates had gone through. So I had an easy ride. Okay. All I had to do was immerse myself in culture, love the people, learn the things I didn't know, and I felt like it fitted into place. But you're telling a story of I was convinced to go back and do exams again. And I'm like, that is not the same level of acceptance, your equivalent, you're coming in. What was it, do you think, on if we can go back to that kind of moment
yeah.
that you thought, I want to go and do those exams? What was it going to allow either doors to open? What was it going to allow that was different than what you had?
Like I said, I had a very inspirational mentor. I had someone who I think genuinely wanted to see me succeed and help lead me in the way to that. So there was a bit of an emotional connection. There was a bit of I have someone that I look up to
Mhm.
that I want to make happy. But then at the same time, or rather, I want to be proud of me. But at the same time, it was like, well, it's a sensible thing to do. I'm very pragmatic.
Mhm.
I was going to come to England for a year. I was going to go back to Barbados. And he said one thing to me. He said, well, whilst you're here, let's keep your brain going. Why don't you do the first exam? And I thought, well, yeah, I suppose if I just sit here and do the work, that's comfortable. But if I have to do this exam and do it their way, I kind of I'm giving myself I saw it as a way to keep myself current and safe and continue in being a good physician. So a lot of it was just about me
Mhm.
because it was not my intention to stay in England at that point. But I thought, you know what? If I do this exam, I'm going to be a better doctor. And I have capacity to do it. I have the time to do it. And yeah, I want to do it. So I did it not, I did it really for personal fulfillment,
Yeah.
to continue to feed my own need to know that I'm putting my best foot forward.
Okay. Okay. Did that also then allow you to be like a recognized consultant within the UK
No, no, no,
system?
no, 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 no. Well, you see what happened after that? My mentor then said to me, well, since you've done the exam, why don't you apply for higher grade positions? And I thought, well, there's kind of no point. I'm going back to Barbados. And then again, I thought, well, you know what? It's a process. I'll have to study, I'll have to do interviews, I'll have to practice, I'll have to learn how to speak, how to present on the whim, how to put together a presentation. And again, I went, you know what? This is going to be useful to me. And
Mhm.
at the time, England was going through a very strange period where they were reforming the whole training portfolio. And at the time, someone like me was going to be very unlikely to get a position in anywhere central. I was in Yorkshire, in any central city, and Yorkshire was a bit of a cultural shock, and that was enough for me. So I didn't think that when I applied to any positions, I was going to get any. But I think what that meant is I was so relaxed about the whole thing. I had no fear, I had no apprehension. I was going into it for the fun of it. And as it turned out, I had two interviews. One of them was in London, and they offered me a job. And it was like, oh, well, okay, I have a job now. Well, Barbados isn't going to go anywhere. I might as well see what it's like to live in London. Always go back if I don't like it. Yeah, and that's how I ended up in London. So yeah, my mentor was the one who sort of put these things in my head. And, he didn't push me to anything. He just said, look, while you're here, you could do this. While you're here, you can do that. And in each instance, I thought, yeah, I can benefit from this. So yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah.
And that's how it went.
Yeah. Fair enough. In Barbados, were you a consultant level anesthetist?
I would have been if I had gone back. It was
Right.
almost like an elective period kind of thing.
Yeah.
So yeah, so I gave up being a consultant in Barbados to be a registrar in London.
That's what I thought. So that's what I was kind of being curious about, that
Yeah.
this interesting international medical graduate, again, this process of what's equivalent, what's not, what hoops
Mm-hmm.
and things you have to jump over to prove yourself. And then on reflection, then as you graduated and became a consultant in London, do you think there was a significant difference?
As a consultant in both
Yeah.
places?
Yeah.
Um,
Like, what are the differences, if that's a
yes.
better question?
Yeah, yeah, yes, there would have been. I think my scope of practice, Barbados is a small place.
Mhm.
It's 166 square miles. There's one major hospital, and it's a very small community. So I think my scope of practice would have been a lot more limited than it eventually was in the UK. Um, I'm very grateful that I trained in Barbados first
Mhm.
because it gave me a really solid clinical foundation.
Mhm.
Because what then led me, when I think back on my career, to being a coach for doctors now, a career coach for doctors, is the experience of being that international student in
Yeah.
an environment where people are questioning your right to be there. If I
Yeah.
had not had that clinical basis and I was still worrying about exams and how I did my work, I probably would have failed and have returned to Barbados. Now,
Right.
whether I would have seen that as, I probably would have seen that as a failure. But
Yes.
it was because I had that clinical foundation that was really solid. I
Mhm.
had the capacity, I had the room to deal with the non-clinical things that were being sometimes hurled at me,
Mhm.
sometimes serendipitously slipped me.
Yeah.
And, sometimes I was completely blindsided because there were stresses in my career that I think were completely unnecessary. Part of it was the time that I was there. Part of it was the way people thought. Part of it is the system.
Mhm.
Most of it is the system and the way people think. This concept of having to prove yourself constantly, having to not make mistakes, having to always be one up, um, never being tired, never being emotional, never being fed up, never make, it was all completely unnecessary because we were treated as if we were not human beings. It's like, you are a doctor. This is your beginning, your middle, and your end, your alpha, your omega, your identity. This is who you are. Anything else is secondary to that. And if you can't do that, you're not a good doctor. And so there were a lot of struggles that revolved around that concept. And it wasn't until I made it to Qatar and I really had time to think about why I ended up in Qatar. And I ended up in Qatar because I was becoming burnt out. I was becoming, I was no longer able to cope with the struggle. And this is as a consultant. This is not as a trainee. This is not as a beginner. This is
Yeah.
with nearly 20 years of medicine under my belt. And I ended up in Qatar because it got to the point where I was going, I don't know if I can do this till retirement, but I love being a doctor. I love it, but it's not my be all. It's not my end. I love it. I don't want to give it up. But if I don't make a change, and I had already started making changes, but I needed to make bigger changes. I needed to have a difficult conversation with myself and go, this is not working. What can you do? And it's the main reason I ended up leaving London and coming to Qatar, because if I had stayed, I don't know if I would still be a doctor. Um, and that is very important to me. I love being a doctor. I love being an anesthetist. I think it's
Yeah.
the best job in the world. I know the surgeons will say different and whatnot, but I'm fascinated by it. I'm continually learning from it. And I didn't want to have to give that up because the system wanted me to be somebody that I wasn't.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a very enlightening insight into what it was like in that day to day in that new for you health system at that point. So, what were the signs that showed you that reflection of I can't continue in this way, this isn't healthy for me? What were the sorts of things you were experiencing in your body that you can now kind of notice or be able to identify as your burnout?
Yeah. I mean, so one of the things that I used to say to people, I used to say I felt as if as soon as I walked through the hospital doors, I could hear, in the boxing ring when the round is there, you hear the ding 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 ding. It was like I walked through the doors and I heard the ding 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 ding, and I took up the posture. I said,
Right.
right, oh gosh, I forget the video game, what it was called, and it used to go fight, and you had to start boxing and kicking, and I forget what it's called. My husband would remember. And that's what it felt every day. It was like, fight. I'd get home 12 hours later. My husband and I were ships in the night because he was working in London as well. On weekends, it was like, okay, I can't rest on a weekend because I have to do everything that I can't do during the week. So I would start the week not feeling refreshed. I would just start the week with that ding, ding, ding going on in my head. And I was going through, and I'm thinking, well, it's tough for everybody. When you talk to the other consultants, they feel the same way. And then people were volunteering to do extra work. So I volunteered to do extra work because we had to get the waiting list down, And I kept feeling like I needed to do my part and I needed to do better. And I was struggling, I was tired all the time. I I, I started to balloon out. I was never a tiny thing, but at one point I got up to 98 kilos. It was just on my 165 centimeter frame. That's pretty hefty. And I just seemed to be caught in this spiral. And what actually flicked the switch for me was it was just one of these things. We were in theater and the surgeon was grumbling because he'd just seen his GP and had been put on a different antihypertensive and he wasn't liking it because he was getting a bit lightheaded. And we were waiting on a patient. So we said, okay, let's check your blood pressure. And we checked his blood pressure and then we were still waiting on a patient. So everybody started checking their blood pressure. So, well, guess what? I checked my blood pressure. And it was 163 over 96. And I thought, whoa, that's unexpected. And I didn't think about it for too long. The patient came, we got on in life. A few weeks went by. And again, we were in another theater waiting on a patient, and somebody else, I don't know why, said, oh, and somehow we ended up checking blood pressures again. And I checked mine, and it was 160 something over 90 something. And I thought, oh, okay, this is actually a problem. So I went to my GP, and the GP went, well, every time you come here, your blood pressure is normal. So I said, okay, I'm going to buy a blood pressure machine, and I would check my blood pressure. Great, good idea. And I have high blood pressure in my family. I'm getting a bit older. So I thought, oh, yeah, here we go. This is happening. It's part of life. It's in my genetics. Got to lose some weight, blah, 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 blah. And I started to do all the right things. And I'd be at home and my blood pressure would be normal. And I would cycle to work. And just before I cycle, I'd take my blood pressure because now I'm trying to lose weight. And, I'd take my blood pressure in the middle of the night. And every time it was normal. And every time I stepped through the doors of the hospital, every time. Now I'm at work for 10 to 12 to 18 hours a day, 5 to 6 days a week, with a systolic of 170 and a diastolic near 100. And that's when I started saying to myself, hang on a minute, chick. Your health is starting to go down the river and you need to do something about it. So I started putting all those boundaries in place, and no, I'm not staying, and no, I'm not doing overtime, and no, I'm not doing extra listen. But all it felt like was I was just creating more conflict within myself, because I felt bad saying, no, I'm not going to do the next patient. No, I'm not going to start half an hour early. No, I'm not going to work on Saturday. And it really started to affect my psyche, where I was no longer enjoying my work. I was no longer wanting to come to work. And like I said, then this conversation came up because I saw somebody looking not themselves, and I said, hey, what's going on? Which was part of my role, because I was an appraiser, I was a mentor, I was a clinical tutor. I had all these other non-clinical things that I did, which I also really enjoyed. But what it meant is I talked to people a lot, and people talked to me. And in talking to this person, I realized how much they were struggling. And I thought to myself, well, this can't be right. We're two senior consultants here, and we are struggling to live our lives. And I'm very spiritual. I'm not religious, but I'm very spiritual. And I believe that when you put things out into the universe, you get what you put out. And at that point in time, I was putting out that I need to do better for myself. And I believe that that's why I was in that room with that person at that time, to ask that question, to find myself in a job in Qatar. And that person was somebody that I didn't see normally on a day-to-day. I hadn't seen them for weeks. Our hospital was across two sites. We hardly saw each other. And just on that day, we randomly saw each other. We started a conversation, and I ended up in Qatar. And it wasn't until I was there and I was completely out of that environment, I realized how bad things had become for me. How I was feeling, how I was approaching life, how I was dealing with challenges, how I had stopped enjoying my job. And that's when doctors caring for doctors came into being. Because whilst I was in Qatar, I had time to do something else I wanted to do. So I did a master's in business. And I thought, what am I going to do with this master's? And it had a huge component of leadership and coaching in this master's in business. And I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to help doctors not ever feel the way I felt. That's what I'm going to do. And that's how the coaching business got started. So what it took me 20 years to work out, I help doctors. I walk with them so that this journey of asking yourself the difficult questions, they're not going through it alone, so that they can have that career, that fulfilling career that they want, without the sacrifice of that happy life.
Love it. I have questions, follow-up questions. All right, now you've just come out of burnout. You've got to Qatar. You're in a brand new health system, brand new culture, probably the same problems of different medication names, different ways people work, different shifts, different everything different. And you're like, I'd like to do a master's in business. Now tell me what? That came out of left field for me in that story. Where did that come from?
Well, originally, because I did a certificate in medical education when I was a consultant. And I had really wanted to do the master's in medical education.
Mm-hmm.
And let's just say I was not supported when I went forward to my immediate leadership to say, well, hey, look, I really want to do this. I don't need anything from you. I need
Mm-hmm.
like, I don't know, three days in a year where
Mm-hmm.
I can go and do some face-to-face training. And I pretty much got a flat no.
Wow.
Um, well, it wasn't a no, it was the actual words were, well, I hope you know you'll be doing this all on your own.
Wow.
So I was like, wow, okay, fine. So I land in Qatar now, and I suddenly have all this space,
Mm.
space that I didn't have when I was when I was in London. I had all this space to think and reflect. And I have an amazing son-in-law who is not in medicine at all. He's in finance. And I said to him, you know what? I think this is the opportunity for me to do that master's in medical education. And he went, well, you know what, Mum? You've already got a certificate in medical education. Why don't you do something that you know nothing about? And I went, oh, yes, of course, that's a brilliant idea. Let's give myself another challenge. So he's business minded, and he said, look, if you take this, if you do this degree in business, you might be able to do all kinds of things with it. If you do a master's in medical education, that's great, but you've already got a degree in that. Do something that is going to complement what it is that you do now. And I thought, well, this is a really good idea because I don't know anything about business. And I chose not to do specifically a master's in hospital business,
Mm-hmm.
again, because I took it, I took what he said and stretched it as far as I could. Do it in something you know nothing about.
Mm.
And it has made me such a better leader. It has made me such a better communicator because as a doctor, I only thought one way,
Mm.
really. Yeah, I'm smart, I'm intelligent. Clearly, every doctor is smart and intelligent, but we are taught to think one way.
Mm-hmm.
And it matches with our personalities. Because most of us, we're those people. We like a beginning, we like an end, we like a target. We like to, and all of a sudden people were going, well, no, 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 no. If you think about this, and I was reading papers where people were writing published papers only on their thoughts. And I thought, well, I thought that only happened in literature. It's this is business. I thought I was going to be doing numbers and figures, and I did that as well. But all of a sudden, it was like how teams work,
Mm-hmm.
why team individuals succeed and others fail, or why does leadership work in certain communities and not in others, different
Mm-hmm.
types of leadership. And all of a sudden these things were coming to me that I'd never had an idea about, that really I knew existed. I mean, sort of in the back of the mind. But all of a sudden, it was like, okay, so this is why when I sit in a meeting and I speak as a doctor, the managers don't understand. And when the managers speak, the doctors don't understand.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
this is why, trainees, clash
Mm-hmm.
with consultants, and consultants, the difficult trainee, right? And all of a sudden, all of these things that we were never taught as physicians started to fall into place. And whilst I was already doing things in leadership positions, when I was in London, I was the head of the clinical governance for the theatres. I didn't actually really understand how I really could have leveraged that role better. So when I then took up that role in Qatar, I was so much better at it because I had
Mm.
a different way of thinking.
Yeah.
And this is one of the things that I think really helps doctors when they decide to have coaching. It's actually speaking to someone who doesn't think the same way you do.
Mm-hmm.
And it really opened my mind to understanding what I went through, the reasons why I went through it, why certain things were so much easier to overcome than others.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, how I could then help other doctors deal with these same issues in a much more efficient, less traumatic way than I had to deal with them. You know, doctors spend so much time in mental anguish because it's almost like there are two sides of us sometimes. You know, the doctor bit that wants to be this perfect superhero, and the human being. And doing that degree in medicine, in business, actually gave me such a better understanding of those interactions and those intricacies that it was more than well worth doing it. And when I landed in Qatar and I said to my leadership 6 months later, hey, I want to do this degree, they went, yes, how can we support you? You've got to be in the right place at the right time, surrounded by the right people. Can't be you, it's not all on your own.
Yeah, yeah. Love it. Okay, very good. So now tell us how you work with doctors. So what are the things that you're doing within what you've learned, and how do you interact there?
So with the coaching so I coach a specific niche of doctors. I don't coach doctors who already know they want to leave medicine. It's like there are loads of other people out there to help you do that. There are loads of communities out there to help you do that. I work with doctors who were like me. I love my job. I love medicine. I love what I do, but I'm struggling in the environment that I'm in. So when I work with these doctors, we look at sort of three basic tiers that we start with, and every doctor is going to be different. This is a scaffolding, and doctors who come to me, it's never about what they come to me about.
Explain that.
Doctors come to me saying, I want to be this great doctor, and I'm struggling to be a great doctor. Help me be a better doctor. What they actually mean is, I'm a great doctor. I'm already doing that. What I'm struggling with is being a great human. And understanding that my identity, that human, is not only a doctor. My only responsibility is not just to my career. So this is always a very difficult, this is the most difficult stage, that understanding that actually you are a great doctor. The fact that you're not finishing your charts on time, or you feel bad because you want to leave and get home to your 3-year-old or your partner or to your bed or to a wedding, does not make you a bad doctor. It makes you a human being. So we start with the career matrix. And the career matrix is how I start to help people work out who they are and what they really want. Okay, you want to be a doctor. Are you in the right job, in the right place? I'll use myself as an example. I'm an anesthetist. I thoroughly enjoy it. Okay, so am I in the right place? I'm not an academic. Okay, so if I'm an anesthetist in an academic institution, I'm going to struggle. Because I don't want to do research, I don't want to do audit, I don't want to get published, I don't want to see my name in lights, but I'm in an environment that's pushing me to do that. So I'm going to struggle. I'm going to get overwhelmed. I'm going to get burnt out. Okay? Now, it might be that I'm an anesthetist, but that's actually not really what I want to do. I actually might want to be a GP. But, you know, when I told my parents I wanted to be a GP, mom's a surgeon and dad's a, I don't know, plastic surgeon, they went, what? You want to be a GP? No, you can't be a GP. That's not really a thing. So you try and find a compromise and you go, oh God, I really don't want to be a surgeon. Okay, I'll be an anesthetist. And you could be in the best institution, right? But if you didn't want to be an anesthetist, you're going to be struggling. So the career matrix is, are you in the right job, in the right place? So if you're in a job that you don't want to be in, doesn't matter what the institution is, good, bad, different, what the culture is, you're going to struggle. Again, you're going to get overwhelmed, you're going to get burnt out. The sweet spot is that you're in the right job, in the right position. right? You might be what we used to call in London a staff grade, which is a non-consultant grade, right? And you've got people pushing you to be a consultant. You don't want to be a consultant. You're quite happy where you are. But you've got people going, no, 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 this is a dead end thing. You got to be a consultant, because when you be a consultant, then you can do private work. Maybe you don't want to do private work. But you've got these external forces telling you how to be a better doctor. Or you've got these external forces telling you that this is the institution you should be in because it's got prestige, because you could get published, because. So the career matrix is about working out who you actually are and what you actually want. And when you say to a doctor, what do you want? 99 times out of 10, they'll go, oh, well, I want to be a consultant. Or, oh, well, I want to get published. Oh, I want to work in X institution. No, 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 no. I'm not asking you what you want to do with your career. I'm asking you, what do you want out of your life?
Mm.
In 20 years, where do you want to be? And I do this exercise with them. It's nothing I invented. It's called a rocking chair exercise. And my favorite version of that is the retirement exercise. And I take them through an exercise where you're at your retirement party. You've done it, right? Now it's time to sail off into the sunset. What does your retirement party look like? Who's there? Where is it being held? What kind of party is it? Is it a formal sit-down dinner, or is it a, we're dancing on the table kind of party? Where are you going after? Who speaks at your retirement party? Is it your partner? Is it your boss? Is it the director of the hospital? Is it one of the parents from your child's school? Who speaks at your retirement party? And when the party's over, where are you going? Are you going to go fishing? Are you going to go play golf? Are you going to go home to take care of your grandbabies? What does it look like to you? And then and this is usually a very emotional thing for most people, because some people find it scary. Some people find it upsetting. And some people, we have to stop halfway through because it's too overwhelming, because they have already recognized that what they are trying to envision, they're not on the path to that. And that can be quite shocking.
Mm.
So when I work with doctors, I don't start with, okay, well, let's get you the job that you want. I start with the person. And, that doesn't always work for everybody. Some people aren't ready for that kind of work, and I accept that I'm not the coach for you, no problem. You can find another coach. But it's about helping people recognize their own needs, to invest in themselves, not just in their career, and what that looks like for them and how they're going to achieve it.
Mm. Okay, so when you did your retirement party idea for you, where did you do it? Like, what is the environment? If we were going to think about this idea, where would you encourage us to go in order to have an idea if we've never thought about this? Like, because it's common, right? You get a few years into your career, you're busting your gut to do the work, you're trying to live up to everyone's expectations and your patient's expectations, and you're hardly getting your drink and your water and your lunch break and all the things potentially. That's probably why you're here, trying to make it sustainable. And then Dr. Morris is saying, now go think about your retirement. What do you want? What do you want? Who do you want to be? What do you want to achieve about this wonderful life? Okay, tell us your thoughts about you and then about us.
So when I did my retirement party, it was a we're dancing on the tables party, for sure. And if you weren't a dancing on the tables kind of person, there was a table for you too. But you're at my retirement party. And there was every kind of person there. My daughter's friends were there. My in-laws were there. My husband's friends were there. People from work were there. People from my church were there. People from the community were there. It wasn't a retirement. I didn't have 17 retirement parties where I had a party, for this people and the party and the part. No, it was one big retirement party. They all my favorite music played. I tolerated some other people's music as well because you kind of have to do these things. And it was just very informal and lots of fun. And after the party, I was probably gonna grab my grandbabies and take them on holiday somewhere. And after that, I was probably gonna do a cruise, maybe one of those 6-month ones. Yeah. And then go back and get my grandbabies again. Because the plan is in the 6-month cruise, I would stop in places where all my friends are all around the world. So I would get to see my friends as well, who might not be able to make it to the retirement party. But the thing that really cemented what I wanted out of life for me is the fact that I wanted every kind of person there. And if I wanted every kind of person there, I had to honor aspects of myself and truly give them space to come out and enjoy and flourish outside of medicine. So if I wanted people from church, that meant I had to go to church. If I wanted people from the community, that meant I had to go to the community. If I want my daughter's friends there, that means I have to be available to welcome them so that they feel like they're part of the family. So if I want to do all these things, I can't be a doctor 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. I have to put that aside sometimes and go, right, this Pauline is going to go scuba diving. So I have a scuba diving community. This Pauline is going to go to church. This Pauline is going to do this. And to do that, so the other exercise I take my clients through is the dealing with that guilt of saying no, right? Because I think I said this a bit earlier. I really felt awful when I was like, no, 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 no.
Yes.
But that's because that's all I was focusing on, the fact that I was saying no. What I wasn't focusing on was what I was saying yes to.
Yeah.
So if I don't work on Sunday, I say, no, I'm not going to work on Sunday. That means, yes, I'm going to church. And yes, I'm going to go have a dive after church. Or yes, I'm going to. So I stopped going, no. I started thinking about what I would be saying yes to. I'd be saying yes to being at home and watching a movie with my daughter. I would be saying yes to going to dinner with my husband. I'd be saying yes to, I don't know, sleep. I'd be saying yes to going out in the garden. I'd be saying yes to go for a cycle. So it stopped being about no. And it became about yes. Because every time you say no to something, you're saying yes to something else. So when you say yes, I'm going to stay and see 3 other patients in the clinic, you might be saying, no, I'm going to miss my child's concert.
Yeah.
If that's okay with you, that's fine. But if it's not okay with you, you've got to start thinking about your yeses a bit more.
Yeah.
And this is what doctors struggle with, because we are made to feel so guilty for having a life. And it's ridiculous. We're human beings. We're supposed to have a life.
Yeah.
And if you look at the history of medicine, medicine used to be performed by people who were practically removed from society already. In the Western world, there were rich aristocrats whose family was honored that there was a doctor, and their wives took pleasure in saying, oh, Alfred's in the laboratory again, and everybody go, oh, you must be so proud. And that's who a doctor was. But now doctors are women, doctors have families, doctors come from all sorts of social spheres. It's like nurses. Nurses used to be nuns, in these ridiculous, tight nunnery things going, yes, doctor, yes, doctor, yes, doctor. But now nurses are different. Nurses are males. They have different roles. But the way the roles of medicine has changed. 50 years ago, there were only so much you could do for a patient, right? You gave them some antibiotics, you opened their tummy, they either lived or they died. Now there's so much that we can do in medicine. Medicine has grown so much, but we still behave as if doctors have no other responsibility in life than to be that doctor.
Yeah.
And we need to get away from that and recognize that there is joy in this diversity of medicine. And we need to move our thinking ahead to match the advancements that we've made in clinical medicine with the people who are actually creating these miracles in medicine, the people who are bringing forward, the work from the paper to the coal face. And we need to celebrate the fact that they're different and they're special and they're unique and we're not all the same. And we're not cookie cutters anymore in medicine.
Yeah. Yes. And we interact with the entire population, everyone. So we have to be different. We have to be diverse and we have to be able to communicate. And yes, I agree. Love it. Love it. Love it. Love it. This has been a great conversation. Thank you. I think you've already opened our imagination to why it's so valuable to think differently and from a different perspective around these issues, which is really good. How do people find you if they're interested in learning more about what you do?
The easiest way to find me is just put Doctors Caring for Doctors in a browser. You'll find me. There's no other Doctors Caring for Doctors. And the handles are the same on Facebook and Instagram. They're a bit shorter. It's doctors_caring. And that's the easiest way to find me. And yeah, that's and then everybody's on social media now. And my email is there and it's on my webpage and it's just a button click for a conversation if you want to. So you're very easy.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for this conversation and for sparkling our imagination in the area of all the things that we can move, we can change, we can learn new things, we can do incredibly interesting and crazy adventurous stuff too. And I appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you so much.
All right. Have a good week, everyone. Thank you for being part of the Sustainable Clinical Medicine podcast. If you'd like to learn more or join us to help you get home with today's work done, go to chartingcoach.ca. There you'll find all the information on the premier Lifetime Access Charting Champions program that is helping physicians get home with today's work done, with all the proven tools, support, and community you need to create time for your life outside of medicine. We would love to see you there. Until next time, thanks for listening.